Hello everyone, this is Rick. Welcome to an episode where we will discuss in detail about the Vedic period. So Vedic period roughly spanned for about 1,000 years. It has been divided into two parts, the early Vedic age and the later Vedic age. This video has discussions regarding both the ages with all their aspects like economy, trade, agriculture, position and status of women, etc. So please stay tuned until I discuss all the aspects one by one in detail. Okay, now before we start, we should know about something about this presentation and you should follow a few things which will help you to understand this video in a much better way. So carry a notebook when you are listening to this so that you can note down the important points. There will be detailed explanation regarding each topic of this video, so the video will be a bit long. Keywords and important points will be handwritten by me and I am using a pen tab for this, so the handwriting may not be very good. Question answers will be there after every important topic. You can pause the video at certain point and note down the question answers so that it will help you in your exams. Mind map will be there at the end of this video, which will help you to picturize the chapter in a proper way and understand it better. This video is technically not so good, but content is done with utmost care. This video is specifically made for ICSE board students, but anyone who is willing to know about the topic can go through this video because it is in very much detailed form. Okay, so now we will go through an introduction of this Vedic period. So before we get into details, we must know that Vedic period has been divided into two parts. What are the two parts? First part is early, early Vedic period. This extends from 1500 to 1000 BC. And then we have the later Vedic period. Later Vedic, and this extends from 1000 to 600 BC. So these are the two parts of Vedic period. What happened during the later Vedic period? During the later Vedic period, the Aryans expanded eastwards and settled in the valleys of Ganga and Yamuna. So these two rivers were the main places where they settled during the later Vedic age. Also there was introduction of iron which helped to clear forests. So this Gangetic valley and the valley of Yamuna were very much forested. The later Vedic period had iron in it, which made implements that could clear out the forest. Now, why is this culture called Vedic Age? This culture is called Vedic Age because it is based on Vedic texts. Now, what are the Vedic texts? We will get into that in sources. So, Vedic texts were written in Sanskrit. They were written in Sanskrit, and the word Veda is derived from Vid, which means knowledge. Vid means knowledge. The Vedic text is divided into two parts. So this text is also having two parts. What are the two parts? The first part is called Shruti. Two parts. Shruti. What is Shruti means? Means it is revealed by God, and so it was passed down orally, orally from generation to generation. The next part is called Smriti. It means it was composed, composed by rishis. So the rishis composed this, and hence the Vedic literature or Vedic texts have two parts. The early Vedic texts mainly consist of Rig Veda. So here we have only one text, that is Rig Veda. In the early Vedic period, there is only one text, that is Rig Veda. In the later Vedic period, we have the remaining Vedas along with Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads. All these two phases correspond to the stages of expansion in India. So that was all about the introduction to Vedic period. Now we will see question answers. We first will start with an assertion and reason type of question. The period between 1500 to 1000 BC is known as the early Vedic period. During this period, following the course of rivers, the Aryans settled in the Gangetic Valley. A is true and R is false. The assertion is correct because 1500 to 1000 BC is the early Vedic period. However, the reason is incorrect because the Aryans settled in Gangetic Valley during the later Vedic period, that is 1000 to 500 or 600 BC, not during the early Vedic period. Name the two categories of early Vedic literature. Why was the early Vedic literature known as Shruti? The two categories of Vedic literature are Shruti and Smriti. Shruti is so called because it was believed to have been revealed by God to the sages. It was transmitted orally from teacher to disciple for many generations. For many generations, they were not at all written down. They were just transmitted orally, and people preserved the knowledge of the Vedas for 1000 years by just remembering them. Literary sources, the four Vedas. So, what are the four Vedas? At first, we will start with Rig Veda, which is the first Veda and the most important one. So this is the oldest text in the world. So Rig Veda is the oldest text in the world, and it is known as the first testament of mankind. So we do not, until now, there is no other text that has been discovered which is older than Rig Vedas, and this has been divided into 10 mandalas. They are just like chapters. Mandalas. 10 mandalas are there in Rig Veda. It was composed during early Vedic period. We already know that. It describes the life of the people during the early Vedic period. There are hymns to different gods. So hymns are dedicated to different gods, and these were transmitted orally from teachers to disciples. disciples, and thus the knowledge of the Vedas were preserved. So much of Indian philosophy is based on the Rig Veda. It also contains the famous Gayatri mantra. So Rig Veda contains the famous Gayatri mantra, and it has been included by the UNESCO in the list of literature signifying world human heritage. So this has been included in UNESCO. UNESCO in the list of literature which signifies human heritage of the world. Passages in the Rig Veda maintain that modern scholars interpret as the earliest reference to solar eclipse. So this has earliest reference to solar eclipse. Thus, Rig Vedic people were important for their scientific discoveries also. So the eclipse is described as sun being pierced by darkness. It was caused by evil beings, and after which San's magic arts returned. So this has been provided as a description of eclipse, where it has been stated that some evil forces consume the sun, and then again after some time the magic of the sun had returned. That was the description about the solar eclipse. Modern astronomers comparing these descriptions with astronomical calculations suggest that eclipse may have occurred. Eclipse time, what was the time? We have backdated, modern astronomers have backdated the events, and they have found the date to be 22nd October 4202 BC, or 19th October, this is or 19th October 3811 BC. So thus the date of Rig Veda is very confusing, because modern evidences regarding the astronomical dates suggest that it had been composed much earlier than 1500 BC, which was the assumed date until now. So this period is believed to correspond to the lifetime of sage. So this was Rig Veda was composed at the time of sage Ved Vyas, who is also believed to have composed the Mahabharata. Then we have another important Veda, that is the Sama Veda. Now this is a later Vedic text. Shama Veda, Sham means sweet song or melody. So here Shama means sweet song or melody. That is the meaning of the word psalm, and many hymns were borrowed from the Rig Veda. These hymns were meant to be sung by priests during sacrifices. So sacrificial rituals were there, and sacrificial rituals does not mean sacrifices of animals. It means sacrificing anything in the fire. So if you are devotedly praying for something, that also means you are sacrificing your time to show your devotion. So any form of ritual in Hinduism is considered to be a sacrificial ritual. So it was sung, these hymns were sung by priests during sorry, during sacrifices. So the priests sung these melodies during sacrifices, which are also called as yagyas. Yagnas. So yajnas, it is not pronounced as yajnas, these are called yagyas. Then we have the Yajur Veda. Yajur Veda. Many people confuse this with the medicinal term Ayurveda, but it's not the same. Ayurveda is something entirely different and has very less relation with Vedas. So it contains hymns dedicated to the performance of yajnas. So this also contain hymns or performed during sacrifices. So it also contains hymns performed during sacrifices. There are two parts of Yajur Veda. First is black. This black is called Krishna Yajur Veda. And then we have the white, which is called as Shukla Yajurveda. So there are two parts of Yajurveda, black and white. It is a complex collection of rituals performed publicly or individually. So it contains public and private rituals. It contains both public and private rituals. It provides information about the social and religious life of people. Now we have the last Ved, that is Atharva Veda. Atharva Veda. This has been composed last among all four. So it contains, what does it contain? It contains magic, charms, and protection. How to protection from evil spirits. So these are the stuffs which are there in Atharva Veda, and most of the hymns are borrowed from Rig Veda. It also discusses Gyan, which means knowledge. It also has talks about karma, which is action. Then it also has how to show devotion, which is upasana, that is invocation. So these are the things present in Atharva Veda. So some verses also describe medicines. Medicines for diseases. So you can just take a screenshot of this slide because it contains summary of all the Vedas, the four main Vedas, and it is explained in very much detail. For preliminary informative exams, nothing will come outside this. So now we will discuss. Okay, so question answer is there. Name the four Vedas and mention what each deals with. So the four Vedas are Rig Veda, contains hymns dedicated to various gods and describes the life of the early Vedic people. Then we have Shama Veda, contains hymns sung by priests during the yajnas, which are sacrifices. Then we have Yajurveda. Yajurveda deals with rituals and hymns recited during yajnas. Atharvaveda contains hymns on magic, charms, medicine, diseases, gyan, karma, and upasana. Now we will discuss the importance of Vedas. What are the Vedas important for? So, firstly, it is the storehouse of knowledge about Vedic age. Storehouse of knowledge about Vedic age. So, whatever we want to know about the Vedic age can be found in the Vedas. That is why it is called as the storehouse of knowledge about the Vedic age. Next, it provides information about social, economic, and religious life of people. Social, economic, political, and religious life of people. Everything we can get from the Vedas. Though mainly religious, they also provide information on all these topics. I am writing them one by one. So, starting with music, medicine, history, philosophy, grammar, metrics, astronomy, art, architecture. So, we can understand that Vedas are composed on a vast range of topics. So they provide information about almost every important field of human life. So the information that is preserved in Vedas is especially valuable because very little other material evidences survives to explain the Vedic age. So archaeological evidences are very sorry very less. That is why literary evidences are very important. So state the importance of Vedas as a source of information about the Aryans. The Vedas are important because they are the storehouse of knowledge about the Vedic age. They provide information about social, economic, political, and religious life of the Aryans. They contain information on music, medicine, history, philosophy, grammar, astronomy, art, and culture, and also architecture. They are most authentic source for understanding the Vedic civilization. Now we will discuss the epics Ramayana and Mahabharata. So these are the two great epics in the Indian subcontinent, and they provide information about political, social, and cultural life of the epic age. So, what information we get? Political, social, and cultural. So these are the kinds of information available in the two epics Ramayana and Mahabharata. So we will start with the first epic, that is Ramayana. What knowledge do we get from Ramayana? So as we know, it was composed in Sanskrit. Then it was believed to have been written by Maharishi Valmiki. Valmiki. It narrates the life of Rama, his exile. So here we know the story already. If you are an Indian, no matter from which religion you belong to, you must have read Ramayana or watched Ramayana in some or the other form. You must have come across its story. So it is the story where Ram goes into exile, and the abduction of his wife Sita happens by the demon king Ravana, and so Ram fights with Ravana with the help of Hanuman and other senas to bring Sita back. So this epic, so I'm not narrating the story. So this epic highlights the ideals of duty, devotion, love, and brotherhood. So these are the main things explained in the Ramayana. So Ram was the eldest of the four sons, and King Dasharath was the ruler of Ayodhya, who had three queens. Ram was about to be the king. Then, because of some political game played by Queen Kaikeyi, he had to go into Vanvas or exile in forest for 14 years. It was at that time that Ravana, the demon king, disguised as sannyasi, and abducted Sita and took her to Lanka. Ram received help from Sugriva and Hanuman. Hanuman is another important character here who shows the essence of devotion. So if you want to know about devotion, you can know it from Hanuman. So with the help of all these people, Ram defeated Ravan, and on completing 14 years of exile, Ram returned to Ayodhya with Sita and Lakshman. So this was the entire story of Ramayana in very much short form. Next epic is Mahabharata. Now, what kind of information do we get from Mahabharata? Firstly, it was also written in Sanskrit. By whom? By sage Vyas. So, sage Vyas wrote Mahabharata in Sanskrit. The original name was Jaya, meaning collection of stories dealing with victory. So, original, this is very important, asked in many competitive exams. Original name. What is the original name? Jaya, which means collection dealing with victory. Collection dealing with victory. So here it and later on it came to be known as later name of Mahabharata after Jaya, it came to be known as Bharata. Why? Because it contains stories about the descendants of Bharata tribe. So that is why the first name was Jaya, later on it changed to Bharata. Then Bhagavad Gita, which is the most sacred, which is believed to be the most sacred book of the Hindu religion, Bhagavad Gita is a part of Mahabharata. So it is a wonderful philosophical text. Gita is from Mahabharata. It is one of the most sacred religious texts of India. It explains that whenever there is a conflict between self interest and duty, duty should prevail. So, duty above all, especially above self interest. This is the concept of Mahabharata, and it also teaches that soul is immortal. So that is all you need to know about the epics Ramayana and Mahabharata. Please go through the stories of the epics, they are very interesting. So name the epics written during the later Vedic period. The two great epics of the later Vedic period are Ramayana, written by Maharshi Valmiki, and Mahabharata, written by sage Vyas. What is known as the Bhagavad Gita? The Bhagavad Gita is a part of the Mahabharata. It contains the discourse delivered by Lord Krishna to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. It teaches the philosophy of karma, which is duty, and immortality of the soul. So this is very important. What is Bhagavad Gita may come in many kinds of exams. Now we will go through the importance of epics. So Ramayana and Mahabharata are important because they are principal source of information. Source of information regarding what? Regarding the political institutions, social organizations, and cultural life of people. All these things are available in the epics. They provide information about kingdoms, armies, and weapons. Kingdoms, armies, and weapons. So these are main topics because Mahabharata especially deals with warfare. They also show that Kshatriyas were responsible for defending their kingdoms and believed that dying in battlefield was the noblest act of warriors. So they gave a huge deal of information about the Kshatriyas, who were warriors. They were warriors who had huge sense of duty, and they will die but not lose. So winning mentality was winning or dying. No one should come back by losing from the battlefield. So they are regarded as some of the finest literary works of ancient India. Finest literary works of ancient India. What? Ramayana and Mahabharata. So the heroes represent high moral principles. Heroes, what do the heroes represent? They represent high moral principles. And the Bhagavad Gita explains the philosophy of karma and immortality of the soul. So these are the reasons because of which the epics are very important. So mention the importance of epics as a source of information about the Aryans. The epics are important because they provide information about the political institutions, social organization and culture of the epic age. They describe the Aryan kingdoms, their armies and weapons. They reveal high ideals of family life and moral values. They are among the finest literary works of ancient India and possesses great philosophical value. So these are the keywords and the answer to the question of why are epics important. Which battle is known as the Mahabharata? For how long was this battle fought? The war fought between the Kauravas and the Pandavas is known as the Mahabharata War. It was fought for 18 days. After the war, Yudhishthir became the ruler of Hastinapur. Now we will go through the archaeological sources. As I said, very few archaeological sources from the Vedic period survive, but still we will discuss whatever is available. So apart from the literary sources, we also have the archaeological sources. These help in verifying the information obtained from the literary sources. So archaeological sources verify the literatures. How much of it is true? That can be verified with the help of archaeology. Hence, discovering archaeological sources are very important. Now, we have to begin the archaeological sources with the significance of iron implements. Now, these iron implements are found from the later Vedic period, and they have been found in sites such as Hastinapur, Alamgirpur, Noh, and Atranji Khera. These are important sites for later Vedic period iron implements. And what are the implements found? These are arrowheads, never writes arrows because the whole arrow does not survive. Only the arrowheads survive because those are perishable materials, biodegradable. Then we have spearheads, daggers, axes, knives, sickles, and plowshares. So these are the items found. The use of iron enabled the Aryans. What were these important for? These were important to clear dense forests. Also to expand cultivation in Gangetic Valley. Other than that, there were stronger agricultural tools, and also these were used, iron was used to produce stronger weapons. Hence, the security was more guaranteed. So, iron contributed significantly for agriculture settlements and political power during the later Vedic age. If you see this as a map of India, then here we have the Himalayas, and Yamuna flows like this, Ganga flows like this. So here we have the Gangetic Valley. Now this place had a lot of forests which couldn't be cleared with any item other than iron implements. So that is why iron implement is very important. This was the time when later Vedic people, this was the period of later Vedic age, and roughly this was the period of early Vedic age. So this was the place of early Vedic age, and the blue section is was the period of later Vedic age. Hence you can see that people traveled eastward. That is why in the east, because of fertile lands, there were a lot of forests, and those forests could only be cleared with the help of iron implements. So remember this. Next, we will discuss about the pottery of the later Vedic period. So, discovery of pottery. Why is it important? Why is pottery important? What information does pottery give? So, previously everything had to be done on containers, and those containers were not always metal. It was almost never metal. Everything was done on clay pots. So, how the pots are made, what kind of technique is used, what kind of designs are made, all these give us an insight in the culture, settlements, and daily life of the later Vedic people. So this was also the time of later Vedic age. So what do we know? Culture, settlements, and daily life of the later Vedic people. From where? From the discovery of potteries. So the first important type of pottery is called the grey ware. What is grey ware? It is the earliest type of pottery. This is earliest type of pottery associated with later Vedic age. Later Vedic age. And it is very important because its technique was plain, thick, and gray in color. So this was plain, thick, and gray in color. So this was mainly used for domestic purpose. So grey wire was mainly used for household jobs. Then we had the painted grey ware, which is called the famous PGW, painted grey ware. Now, how is this important? So this is called the type pottery or the characteristic pottery of the later Vedic age. So this is called characteristic pottery of later Vedic age. Later Vedic age means it was mostly found during the later Vedic age. And what were its types? They were fine, thin, and obviously gray. So fine, thin, and gray in color. It was decorated with black painted geometric designs. Black painted geometric designs were there. And archaeologists have discovered this kind of pottery in several sites, like again Hastinapur, Alamgirpur. So I am not writing because I have already written it before. So all the main sites associated with the later Vedic age, there was painted graveware in all of them. So the distribution of PGW corresponds to the Mahabharata sites. So whatever places are mentioned in Mahabharata, all those places have PGW in it. Then we have the most fine and an exemplary example of technological innovation, that is northern black polished ware, which is NBPW. This came in the last part of later Vedic period. So later phase of later Vedic period. It came in the last part of later Vedic period, and this was famous because it was highly polished and it had a shining black surface. So the surface was very shining. So this appearance of NBPW indicates that there was improvement in technology, trade, and urban development. So NBPW is very important because it gives us a sign of improvement in technology, what else? Trade and urban development. So that is why NBPW is very important, even though it came in the last phase of later Vedic period. Now we will go through the significance of archaeological sources. Why are the archaeological sources important in this discussion? So archaeological sources are important because they are the supporting materialistic evidence. Supporting evidence of Vedic literature. You see, texts can be fictionalized. They can say anything and everything. But when we find archaeological evidences to support what is written in the text, then we can be sure that those informations are not fabricated. So iron implements are also there, and this proves that Aryans had entered Iron Age. That can be proved from the huge presence of iron implements. So from the iron implements, we get to understand that Aryans had entered the Iron Age. So it helped in the clearing of forests, expanding agriculture, and increased food production. This can be evidenced. Increased food production. What else do we know? That there are different varieties of pottery. Varieties of pottery are there, and what information does it give? It gives information about craftsmanship and technology. Craftsmanship and technology of the people. The spread of PGW helps historian identify the spread of painted grey ware. From this we can understand the extent of later Vedic age, where it was spread to. How much was the extent of later Vedic culture? Together, these archaeological remains provide reliable evidence about the economic, social, and material life of later Vedic people. So, what do you know? Economy, society, economy, and society of later Vedic people. All these can be understood from the archaeological sources available from the later Vedic period. We will see the historical importance of the Vedic sources. This means the importance of literary sources and also the archaeological sources. So Rig Veda is regarded as the first testament of mankind, and so Rig Veda is the first, once again I am writing because this is very important, first testament of mankind. What else? All these texts provide information about music, rituals, religious ceremonies, magic, medicine, and philosophy. So these are the various topics which are covered in the literature. The epics provide information about, so epics are also there. What information do we get about from the epics? Rulers, society, then warfare and ideals, the morality of people, ideals. All these information can be obtained from the epics. Then we have the Gita, which give us information about soul and duty. It gives us information about many things, but the main thing I am writing. Then we have iron implements and pottery. They give us a wide range of information about different topics. So if you want to know about the Vedic age, you will have to take both literary sources plus archaeological sources into account. So you cannot judge an age based on literature alone or even archaeology alone. Okay, so now we will discuss how was the settlement and social organization during the early Vedic period. Now here I should tell a thing of importance, that is, during the early Vedic period, it has been stated in ICSE syllabus that the Aryans came to India during the early Vedic period. Aryans are Central Asian tribe who came and settled in India. This theory is popularly known as Aryan invasion theory. Aryan invasion theory. This was propagated as a sign of divide and rule. So Britishers launched this theory in order to promote a sense of divide and rule between the North and South. But recent research shows that this theory is absolutely false. DNA research and other forms of analysis show that Aryan invasion never took place. But in our book, it is written that Aryan invasion was there, and the Vedic civilization people were actually Aryans who came from outside. So I am right now discussing according to the book. But you know this, that Aryan invasion theory has been totally proved false in recent research. So during the early Vedic period, the people settled in northwestern part of subcontinent. So Aryans settled in the northwestern part of Indian subcontinent. So based on the rivers and mountains mentioned in Rig Veda. So in Rig Veda, rivers and mountains are mentioned, and this shows that people settled in Kabul river around Kabul river and Punjab. So people settled around the Kabul river and around the modern province of Punjab. I am saying province because half of the Punjab is in Pakistan. And this region is called as Sapta Sindhu. Sapta Sindhu. What are the main rivers in Sapta Sindhu? So Sapta Sindhu consists of these main rivers. First river is Sindhu. Sorry, Sindhu. This is Indus. Then we have Parushni. Parushni is Ravi river. Then we have Satudri. This is Sutlej river. Next, Vipash, which is Beas river. Then we have Vitatsa, which is Jhelum. Then we have Ashkini, which is Chenab. At last, we have the Saraswati river. Now, this Saraswati river does not exist anymore because of some tectonic plate changes. This Saraswati river has ceased to exist, and today we have the Ghaggar Hakra. Ghaggar Hakra basin, and it is assumed that this is the place where the mighty Saraswati river flowed. And all these rivers, the area of Sapta Sindhu, all these rivers covered the places of eastern Afghanistan plus Punjab plus West UP. So these are the places of Sapta Sindhu region, and this happened during the Rig Vedic time. So later this region came to be known as Brahmavarta. Brahmavarta. This literally means land of the gods. So Brahmavarta means land of the gods. So eastern Afghanistan, Punjab and western UP together made the Brahmavarta. And what are the rivers in these areas? These seven rivers. That is why it was called Sapta Sindhu, means land of seven rivers. So this was a fertile place. This Brahmavarta region was fertile. Hence, there was stable agriculture. Okay, so that is why the land of Brahmavarta was very important. And if there is stable agriculture, that means people will turn to a settled life rather than a nomadic life. So this was a new culture which was a settled life, where people had settled life because of stability in food source. So that is all about the settlement of early Vedic period. Now we will see social organization, family and position of the king. So how was family in the early Vedic period? So let us see. At first we will discuss about family. So how was family in the early Vedic period? So people lived in villages. Villages were the main unit in early Vedic period, and family was the fundamental unit of society. Family was patriarchal. So family was patriarchal means male head of the family was there, and this head was called grihapati or Kulapati. So Grihapati or Kulapati was the head of the family, and death, after death of after death of Grihapati, who became the next head? Next head was the eldest son. So eldest son became the next Grihapati. And also marriage took place after a boy and girl attained maturity. So marriage after maturity. So there was no marriage before a boy or a girl was matured enough to marry. So monogamy was the normal form of marriage. This is very important. Marriage was monogamy, means there would be only one partner for a person. There were several administrative divisions. Administrative divisions. What were those divisions? There was grammar. So grammar was there, which are the villages. Then several grammars joined together to form Visha, and several Visha joined together to form Jana. So grammar was the single unit, different grammars together made Visha, different Visha together made Jana. So who were the heads? Heads of grammar were respectively Gramini. You can understand from the name itself. Gramini means head of grammar. Then came the Vishayapati. Vishapati. Then came the Rajan or king. So king was the head of Jana. Now we will see how was the Rajan or king. What were the powers of the king or Rajan? So the king ruled with the help of ministers. Help of ministers. Several ministers helped the king to rule properly. Who were the important officers? Important officers were Gramini. Then we had the sorry Purohit. After that we had the Senani. So Graminis are the head of grammars. We had Purohit who were the spiritual heads, and then we had Senani which was the commander in chief. So Purohita village administration was headed by Gramini. Purohita held religious functions, and Senani was the commander commander in chief. So these were the function. Here we had village, we already know this. Village administration was headed by the Gramini. Purohita was the head of religious functions, and Senani was the commander in chief. During the Rig Vedic period, king did not maintain a regular army. There was no regular army. First time we find regular army is during the Mauryan period. Before that, we did not have a regular army. So, in times of war, he organized tribal groups, tribal groups for military. So, if someone is a farmer during war, the king may call that person to hold weapons against the enemies. So, tribal groups were organized for as military. During the later Vedic period, there were certain changes. Later, sorry, during the later Vedic period, what changes took place in this system during the later Vedic period? So, kingship became hereditary. Kingship became hereditary. Also, king became associated with divine elements. There were rituals like Vajapaya. Vajapaya. What is the meaning of Vajapaya? Vajapaya, and also there were Rajasuya rituals. Vajapaya and Rajasuya. These rituals were based on the coronation system of the king. So these were coronation ceremonies for the kings. The taxation system taxation system became more important in the later Vedic period. What were the taxes? The different types of taxes were Bali, Shulka, and Bhag. So these were different types of taxes in the later Vedic period. So what change do we notice? Kingship became hereditary. There were several coronation rituals associated with the king, and we find the taxation system where Bali, Shulka, and Vaga became important taxes. So, the Rig Vedic age, the family was the fundamental unit of society and was patriarchal. After the death of oldest member, the eldest son took over the responsibility of the family. So, R is the reason for A. This is the answer. The family was patriarchal because the eldest male, Grihapati or Kulapati, was the head of the family. After his death, the authority passed to the eldest son, proving that leadership remained with male members. Hence, the reason correctly explains the assertion. During the early Vedic period, the king did not maintain a regular army. In times of war, he organized tribal groups to perform military functions. The answer is A is the reason for R. Explanation: since the king did not maintain a permanent army, he had to organize tribal groups whenever war broke out. Thus, the assertion explains why the reason happened, making option B correct. Rig Vedic assemblies. Now, there were different kinds of associations and assemblies during the Rig Vedic period. We will discuss them one by one. So, the three main assemblies were Sabha, Samiti, and Vidhata. Sabha, Samiti, sorry, and Vidhata. These were the three main assemblies. Among this, Vidhata was the earliest assembly. So Vidhata was the earliest, and now we will see one by one. So at first we will start with Vidhata. What was the Vidhata? Vidhata was an assembly that performed the functions related to economy. Then we had military functions, also religious and social functions. So these were the common elements dealt with in the Vedanta. The important thing about Vedanta is that women actively participated. So there was active women participation in the Vedanta. Now we will see Samiti. What was Samiti important for? It was General Assembly of the people, and Sabha was the council of elders. Samiti met on special occasions. It was not a regular assembly, so Samiti met on regular occasions, and it was a general assembly of the people. Now we will see what was Sabha. Sabha was the council of elders. So all the elders or the knowledgeable people in the society used to come together in the sabha. It had mainly two functions. One is advisory and the next is judicial. So sabha was important because it had advisory and judicial functions. But during the later Vedic period, again there were many changes. So changes in later Vedic period. What changes were there? Sabha and Samiti came under the control of chiefs and rich nobles. Sabha and Samiti came under the control of chiefs and rich people. So rich nobles and the chiefs control Sabha and Samiti. They replaced the functions of popular assemblies. So officials were there. Officials replaced functions of assemblies. All the assemblies did not have any other work, and Sabha and Samiti, whatever they used to do, now there were specialized officials for it. And more or less, we can say that popular assemblies declined. Declined during the later Vedic age. So those were the changes during the later Vedic times. Now we will see, so how was the position of women in the early Vedic period? Now position of women will be discussed under two heads, that is starting with early Vedic period, and we will also see the position of women in later Vedic period. So in the early Vedic period, women had high social status, which is very important. So, in the ancient period, in the first form of Indian culture that we know of, women had a very high social status. There was no child marriage. So, child marriage did not exist in the early Vedic period. Girls received education and was considered important. So, education for girls were very much given importance. Then there was Upanayana ceremony also. This sounds like amazing but surprising, but actually it used to happen. Upanayana means initiation ceremony. Initiation ceremony. Nowadays, Upanayana happens only for the Brahmin boys. So this was there for girls also during the Rig Vedic period. Then there were educated women known as Brahmavadinis. Brahmavadinis. Who were Brahmavadinis? They were highly educated women, and they had infinite source of spirituality. So they were educated women and were also very spiritual. So that is how women were very much regarded as important people in the Rig Vedic society. So Rig Veda contains hymns composed by 27 women seers. Rig Veda has hymns by 27 women seers. Who were the 27 women seers? We cannot name all of them, but we will name some of them. So there were Ghosha, she was a woman seer, Ghosha, then Vishwavara, then we had Apala, Gargi, Gargi. is very famous. Then we have Maitreyi. After that we have Lopamudra. So these were highly educated women who has been mentioned in the Rig Veda. They have been mentioned in the earliest or first text of humanity. So marriage was regarded as sacred. Marriage was sacred. Women had freedom to choose their husband, hence there was no forceful marriage. So they had freedom to choose husband. Women could choose their own husband, and they participated in religious ceremonies along with their husbands. No religious ceremonies without wife. So, no ceremonies without wife. A man alone had no permission to participate in any kind of religious ceremonies. Another one most important fact is that widow remarriage was prevalent. Widow remarriage was prevalent in the Rig Vedic society. So, from all these, we can understand how much respected women were in the early Vedic period. Now, we will see what was the position of women in the later Vedic period. Sad to say, but during the later Vedic period, the status of women declined. So they were not that much paid attention or respected in the later Vedic period. Women were not allowed to undergo the ceremony of Upanayana. So no Upanayana. There was no Upanayana for women in the later Vedic period. Only women who were from the upper classes had access to education. So only upper class women were educated. Sorry. So all the women did not have right to education in the later Vedic period. So their participation in yajnas and religious rituals were no longer considered necessary. So during the early Vedic period, we had seen that no religious ceremony could be done without wife or without woman. So here in religious, not women were not necessary in religious ceremonies. So that was how there was a decline in status. No right to property. Women could not be owners of properties also. And there was no freedom to choose husbands. Women could not choose their own husbands in the later Vedic period. So they were not permitted in assemblies. Assemblies did not exist as such during the later Vedic period, but still, even if it existed, they were not permitted in assemblies. That is how woman position of women declined a lot in the later Vedic period. So state the difference in the position of woman between early Vedic and later Vedic age. In early Vedic period, women enjoyed high social status. The status of women declined in the later Vedic period. In early Vedic period, girls received education and underwent Upanayana. Upanayana for women was discontinued in the later Vedic period. Women could participate in Sabha and Samiti. Women were not allowed to attend tribal assemblies during the later Vedic period. Women had freedom to choose their husbands. In the later Vedic period, this freedom was restricted. Widow remarriage was prevalent, and here we see that participation of yajnas became less important for women and they had no property rights. So, overall, there was a decline in the status of women of the later Vedic period. Now we will see how was the economy in the early Vedic period. So early Vedic period economy was mainly pastoral. Pastoral means people lived off from animal products, and cattle was main wealth. So cattle was considered to be the main form of wealth. Gomat was an wealthy person. So a rich person was called Gomat, means he had lot of cows. The king was given epithets like Gopa or Gopati. Here go means cattle or cows. So king was called Gopa or Gopati. What else do we know? In Rig Veda, Godhuli was used as a measure of time. So Rig Veda states that Godhuli was the measure of time. Today, Godhuli is considered to be the time of evening after the sunset when the cows return home. So, a daughter was called Duhitri. Daughter, daughter was called Duhitri. What does Duhitri means? One who milks the cows. One who milks the cows. So that was the meaning of Duhitri. There is almost no reference to agriculture in Rigved, and few times Yava is mentioned. Yava. Yava is associated with barley. Always remember this, in any ancient civilization, the first crop to be cultivated is either wheat or barley. So references are found to using of fire to clear forests. Fire was used to clear forest, and we also find that rivers frequently changed their courses. So rivers changed courses. The direction of water flow was subject to frequent change. Therefore, alluvial lands near the rivers could not be cultivated permanently. So, what do we know from the economy of early Vedic period? That it revolved around pastoral economy and cattle was the main source of wealth. People today sometimes laugh by these words Gopa, Gopati, Gomat, Duhitri, Godhuli, and people laugh at the fact that why uh, so much attention has been paid to cows and why Indians today are so much obsessed with cows. But cow is an animal whose skin is also important, whose dung is also important. And we must not forget that until 30 or 50 years ago, most of the Indians used cow dung for cooking. So our civilization, which has been surviving for more than 5,000 years minimum, has been totally surviving based on the products of cows. Even cow dung was important. Today we couldn't eat food if for thousands of years we ate food based on the fact that it was cooked with the help of cow dung. So never disrespect cows. Now we will see how was the economy in the later Vedic period. So during the later Vedic period, the economy underwent major changes. Agriculture and alluvial land became important. So later Vedic period economy was mainly agricultural, and fertile lands became important, or alluvial lands. Where do we find most of the alluvial lands? In Ganga Yamuna Doab, Ganga Yamuna Doab, sorry, and Middle Ganga Valley. So these are the places where we get alluvial lands. Hence, agriculture was very much important during the later Vedic period. So literary and archaeological sources indicate that rice was the staple food during this period. Rice was very important, just like in early Vedic period, we find few references to barley. Here we find a lot of references to uh, rice. And rice has been denoted with many kinds of words like vrihi. Vrihi means rice, along with tandula. These are different names of rice given in Rig Veda, sorry, in the later Vedas, along with Sali. So Vrihi, Tandula, and Sali are different words used to denote rice. So references to auction yoke the plow indicate prevalence of plow cultivation. So rice was cultivated using plows. So there is plow cultivation existent in the later Vedic age. For the first time in Indian subcontinent, if we ignore the Rig Veda, whose writings we cannot still read. So towards the end of Vedic period, we find iron plowshares, and also we find metal tools. Thus, we find a total focus on agriculture. But along with agriculture, there were different crafts practiced in the area, like charmakaras. Charmakaras means people who dealt with leather. Leather workers were called Charmakaras. Then there was Rathakaras. Rathakaras are the people who worked in chariots or wheels. Wheels. We also had blacksmiths, potters or kulala. Sorry. Kulala means potters. Takshan means carpenters. So these were different specialized crafts found during the later Vedic period. So none of these occupations were considered low in status. We also have weaving. Weaving was mainly a domestic craft. So weaving was there, which was a domestic craft. Then wool, cotton is not mentioned. Wool is mentioned, but cotton is not mentioned. There was agricultural surplus. Surplus in agriculture means there was production more than required. So this gives what happens when there is surplus production, there will be trade. So trading activities were there, and if there is trade, then you get markets. Markets. And where do we get markets? When there are markets, we get urban settlements. Sorry, urban settlements. So surplus gives trade, trade gives markets, and markets give urban settlements. So trade routes were connected. There were trade routes which connected different settlements. Towns and cities were there. There was also existence of coins, but barter system. Barter system was practiced. Chief form of exchange was barter system. So besides agriculture and trade, there were many other works. Women were also engaged in spinning and weaving. So that is how the economy was there in the later Vedic period. So how did trade become a pivot around which the life of people revolved? Trade became the center of economic life because agricultural surplus encouraged trade. People specialized in different crafts and occupations. Market centers developed for exchanging goods. Trade routes led to the growth of towns and cities. Increasing numbers of artisans, merchants, and administrators settled in urban centers. Food, dress, and amusements. So this also needs to be discussed in accordance to the culture of the Vedic period. So how was food? At first we will discuss food. So how was food during the Vedic period? So sorry, Rig Vedic people ate a lot of barley. Rig Vedic people ate a lot of barley. Wheat was not known during the Rig Vedic period. During the later Vedic period, there was existence of rice, and This rice became staple crop for the later Vedic people. Cows were domesticated, so there was existence of curd, butter, and also ghee. All these things were commonly consumed. There was an intoxicating drink called soma. So soma was intoxicating drink. Soma was intoxicating drink and was consumed during festivals. So during the festivals, people used to consume soma. And now we will discuss dress. So how the people used to decorate themselves. So clothes worn was simple. Undergarment was called nivi or dhoti. So undergarment was nivi or dhoti. This was the undergarment. We had upper garment. What was upper garment? Vasa or shirt. Vasa was there, which is like a shirt. This was the upper garment, and then there was another form, outer garment. What was the outer garment? Outer garment was called adhivasa. So these were three types of dresses worn together. Then we had turbans, which were specifically worn by the men. We also have mrikchal for the sadhus. Sorry, mrikchal, which means deer skin for sadhus. So this was also very prevalent. Men kept long hair. Men had long hair. Both men and women wore ornaments. So ornaments were there. Ornaments for both men and women. So both genders wore a lot of ornaments. These ornaments were made of gold, silver, ivory, and precious stones. What were the ornaments? Earrings, rings, anklets, bracelets, everything was there in the ornaments. Now we will see what were the different forms of amusements, how the people used to entertain themselves. So those were different forms of amusements. There were races, chariot, chariot and horse races. This was very common, along with dancing, singing. We find references to music many times in the Vedas. Hence, dancing, singing must have been popular, along with hunting. So the musical instruments were there like drum, flute, mridang, and lute. Then there were different competitive sports also. Different sports were there, along with people enjoyed themselves in festivals, also in gambling. So these were important activities done by the people of the Vedic period. Now we will see what are the four class divisions or the four Varnas. So although caste system is not mentioned, Rig Ved existed in the time of Rig Veda. There was no caste system. This is very important considering how much caste system is considered important now. We must remember that in Rig Veda there was no caste system, but there was a professional class division. So there was a professional class division, and then what happened? The With the passage of time, the tribal chiefs and priests acquire larger share of booty, leading to social inequalities. As a result, the tribal society became three groups. What were those groups? Warriors, priests, and common people. So these were there in the tribal society, and during the early Vedic period, society was based on profession. Society was based on, I had made a spelling mistake, therefore I removed the spelling, but I don't think anyone is watching, so it doesn't matter what spelling I write. So with the time, occupations became hereditary. Then what happened? Occupations became hereditary. And then there were different occupational classes, and that is how class division or caste system originated in the society. So during the later Vedic period, we have the four Varnas. We have the four Varnas. What are the four Varnas? First Varna is Brahmins. They performed the religious rituals. After that, we had the Kshatriyas. They were engaged in wars, and ruling. Then we had the Vaishyas. They were the people engaged in business, agriculture, and industry. Then we had the Shudras. Who were Shudras? They served the upper classes. So that is how caste system came into existence. So this caste system, Shudras are mentioned in the 10th mandala of Rig Veda. 10th mandala of Rig Veda, which is a later addition. So if someone says in Rig Veda caste system is mentioned, then yes, it is mentioned, but in the 10th mandala, and 10th mandala has been added during the later Vedic period. So this is a chapter which has been added in the later Vedic period. It is a chapter of Rig Veda, but it came much later. So since Rig Vedic economy was pastoral, and not food producing, there was no scope for collecting regular taxes or tributes. So during the later Vedic period, what do we see? Later Vedic period. What changes do we see? Caste system became rigid. It was not professional anymore. So caste became rigid. What else? Brahmins and Kshatriyas enjoyed privileges. Brahmins and Kshatriyas enjoyed privileges. Kshatriyas became ruling class. These people became ruling class. The higher three Varnas. These three Varnas had Upanayana. So these three Varnas had Upanayana, which is sacred thread ceremonies. Intercaste marriages were not permitted. So no intercaste marriages. These are the changes which happened in the later Vedic period. But in Rig Vedic period, there was no caste system. Please remember this, there was no caste system in the Rig Vedic period because caste was based on profession. So it was like doctor, engineer, like that kind of people. So during the early Vedic period, society was divided into different classes based on profession. During the later Vedic period, the caste system became rigid. A and R are independent of each other. The assertion is true because the early Vedic period occupations were based on profession rather than birth. The reason is also true because the caste system became rigid during the later Vedic period. However, the two statements refer to different time periods and one does not explain the other. Therefore, they are independent of each other. This was the this was all about the caste system in the later Vedic period. State briefly the change that occurred in the position of Brahmins in the later Vedic age. During the later Vedic period, the Brahmins enjoyed a privileged position. They came to be regarded as gods on earth. They performed all important religious rituals. They were entitled to Upanayana and occupied the highest position in the society. Now we will see what are the four ashramas. So the four ashramas basically mean four stages of life. So four ashramas mean the four stages of life. So during the early Vedic period, people followed the traditions of their families. In the later Vedic period, the entire lifespan was divided into four stages. So this happened in the later Vedic period. We had four stages, and each stage or ashramas each ashrama was for 25 years. So this system happened during the later Vedic period. Now what are the four ashramas? We will discuss one by one. The first ashrama is the Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya ashram. So from birth up to 20, sorry. So from birth to 25 years of age. This was the time span of Brahmacharya ashram. Students lived in Gurukul. What else was there? They had to acquire knowledge under strict discipline. They had to acquire knowledge under strict discipline. This was all about Brahmacharya. Then we had Grihastha ashram. Grihastha. What was the main thing about this ashram? It was from 25 to 50 years of age. In this ashram, people could marry, raise a family, and perform household duties. So that is how Grihastha ashram was important. Then we had the Vanaprastha ashram. Vanaprastha, and this was from the years 50 to 75 because each ashram was of 25 years. So this was basically the retirement phase of one's life. So a person retired from worldly life, retired from worldly life. Person retired from worldly life and devoted themselves to acquiring spiritual or philosophical knowledge. So spiritual and philosophical knowledge were given very much importance. After that we had the last stage, which is sannyas ashram, and this extended from 75 to 100 years of age, but people mostly did not live that long. So this was the age of renunciation, and a person gave up all worldly attachments and devoted themselves to meditation, and this was done in order to attain moksha, which is salvation. So people waited for their death in the sannyasa ashram. So that was all about the four ashramas. How was the education system of the period? So education was imparted through private private gurukuls. Private gurukuls were the institutions of education. So the residence of what is gurukul? Gurukul, Gurukul means a residence of the guru, means teacher. So meaning the family of guru, this became a sacred institution. So gurukuls were generally located in the outskirts of towns, outskirts of towns, or in forests, means away from the common life of people. So students lived in gurukul under the guidance of the guru, and guru treated students like his own children. Students were treated like own children by the gurus. The students also performed household duties for the teacher. So students performed household duties. Not only studies, they had to learn everything. So what were the things expected from the students? Wake up early in the morning, waking up early in the morning. Next, take a bath, take a bath, and then chant Vedic mantras. So these were all done by the students in very strict disciplinary manner. So teaching was mainly oral. Teaching was oral. Even if there were something written, we had not found it. So the chief objective of education was physical, mental, and spiritual development. What were the chief objectives? Spi- Sorry, spiritual, mental, and physical development. These were the subjects. Now, what were the proper subjects taught? Subjects included Vedas, Puranas, this came in later Vedic period, grammar, mathematics, ethics, logic, and military science. So all these are military science. So all these were different subjects in which a student could be educated. And there were famous, we find the names of famous women teachers like Gargi, also Maitreyi. So these were all the things done in a Gurukul. And also many people have this misconception that Sanskrit was taught in Gurukul. Obviously Sanskrit was taught in Gurukul, but it is not that only the Sanskrit language was taught. Sanskrit was the medium of education. Sanskrit, Vedas were taught using Sanskrit, grammar, maths, science, everything was taught using the medium of instruction as Sanskrit. So that was all about this chapter. Now we will see another question. State two important changes that took place in the society in the process of its transition from the early Vedic period to later Vedic period. Two major changes were the flexible occupation system gradually developed into rigid caste system, which is Varna system based on birth. The status of women declined as they lost many rights including Upanayana, participation in assemblies, and freedom in marriage. Now we will go through a mind map. You can take a screenshot of this image right now because it will be very helpful to you. So we are discussing the Vedic age and we will discuss it under the heads of introduction, sources, political system, family and position of king, four ashramas, Rig Vedic assemblies, economy. We had both early Vedic and later Vedic economy, food, dress, and amusements, position of women again under two heads of early Vedic age and later Vedic age. Then we had discussed the education system. So this is a summary of the entire presentation. Please go through it. It will help you to remember your chapter better. If at all you are here until now, I am sure no one is watching this, which is sad because I make this with lots of effort. However, if you have any doubt, you can contact me at righistoryextended@gmail.com. You can mail me here. Also, you can post your doubt in the comments. I will try my best to answer. So thank you for your love and support. My next videos will be on based on the classes where I teach. So if you want to know the question answers, you can go through these videos. And also if you are preparing for any kind of competitive exams, these videos will be very helpful to you because without knowing history, it's very difficult to crack any form of exams. Thank you so much for your love and support.